Classroom of the Elite Year 2 Volume 7. You know what's the biggest plot hole in Classroom of the Elite? No, it's not the blatant stupidity of the Class D student that stops them from recognizing the holiness of a Yano god. Nor is it the unwarranted deep feelings that Horikita seems to hold for Kushida. No, the biggest plot hole in Classroom of the Elite is maths. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. And the others. No other plot hole even comes close to it. I am sure if you are an avid reader of this novel, you have read some questionable mathematical facts and calculations that made you feel a wee bit suspicious about the Asian background of the author. But you went like, it's fictional, what would you expect? But no, I refuse to continue doing so any longer. Alas, no longer will I ignore the mathematical errors of this novel, when it is staring me right at my face. Caused Sudo placed 11th in the exams. Now that's a good thing, you know. There have been many instances where it has been mentioned that Sudo is now diligent in his studies, and this result is so impressive, and really showcases the growth of his character. Now that would have all been very well, until the author decided to give out the exact marks that Sudo scored on each subject. His scores basically went 70, 70, 73, 76, 78. A total of 367 out of 500. Clearly, by having Sudo score in the 70s, the author wanted to show that Sudo has rapidly made progress in his studies by studying under Horikita, but he is no genius and he has barely caught up with the junior high school level of studies that he had previously forsaken for the sake of basketball. Now that leads to the question, how freaking dumb is Horikita's class? Cause as much as Sudo has improved, he scored a whooping 73.4%. That should not be enough to be put in the 11th place in a class of 38 students. Cause think about this, if 27 students are scoring below 73%, which by the way includes a Yano god, which is a bit crazy considering that he scored a perfect 100 in maths. That means he must have scored 65 in all the other 4 subjects, which of course he did deliberately. He plans miles ahead. But still, that is a lot less marks compared to the marks he was usually getting when he studied with the Ayanokoji group. Funny how a Yano god decided that scoring that low won't attract suspicion. But anyways, back to my point, if 27 students are scoring below 73, what is the class average? You know, in the very beginning the class average was quite low, but then they were improving and I think they beat out Ryuan's class by scoring like 79 average class percentage. But here, now that it has been established that majority of the class scores below 73, let's just garner a guess at what the average class percentage can be. Let's say out of the 27 students scoring below 73, somehow miraculously the lowest marks just stops at 70. Meaning that the 27 students just all scored about 70% with 1-2 getting about 72 or 71. Then let's take the top 10 scores to be the highest possible. Let's say 2 people got 100% even though I know Horikita, the second biggest, scored 4 less marks than Kisei. But yeah, let's take that and get all the top 10 to be on the 90+ percentage. And still with all that, the average class percentage will be 74.6. That is 74 at best possible conditions with Sudo ranking at 11th. Normally with that score and rank, I think the class should have had an average percentage somewhere in the 60s, which is not much in the top Japanese nurturing high school, I believe. You know, I really didn't enjoy doing the maths in this one. Especially considering that the usual maths involved in code is the far superior geometric thigh-high equations of waifu titi. You know, that's the only sort of maths the men of culture can get behind. And speaking of the superior geometry, it turns out Onodera is too thigh proportionally thick to be able to get into the maid costume. That's canon talk, ladies and gentlemen, those words were uttered by the tomboy tan-skinned swimmer herself. Also in the same scene Ayanokoji told Sudo that Onodera actually likes him. So yeah, we probably are gonna see Sudo reject Onodera in the upcoming volumes. Talking about rejections, if you ever wondered what happened to the heartbroken dejected Ichinos, well, keep on wondering. Cause for some reason, she just doesn't get screen time no more. No short story monologue so we could see how she feels, no, none of that. On top of that, there is a rebellion brewing against her class against Ichinos herself. Which I think is completely warranted. I mean that class hasn't got a single dub in a long time because of Ichinos' kindness. But still, I don't want to sound sadistic while saying this, but I would have appreciated an internal monologue of the heartbroken Ichinos. Instead of that, all we got this volume was Ichinos just avoiding Ayanokoji. And Kenzuki coming to the realization that just sticking with Ichinos won't get them any dubs. In fact, Kenzuki was so dispirited that he had even given up on aiming for Class A. Until, a Yano god showed this peasant the way to greatness. aka, introducing him to this girl who also, like Kenzuki, doesn't blindly follow Ichino's but rather just gets swept away in peer pressure. They opened up to each other by screaming at each other, and realizing that they had to battle the peer pressure being put on because of Ichino's. In this aspect, Ayonkoji advised them that they should find people like them. And then battle against the peer pressure. And when Ichino's realizes that as much as she would like to be kind and all, her classmates won't go along with it and then she would be forced to rethink her strategies and compete ruthlessly against all the other classes. Hopefully. So yeah, Kenzuki and the team are on their mission to find hypocrites in their class. Ayonkoji, I think, is now going to let them do their thing and just occasionally give out advices. Alright now, let me backtrack for a second and talk about the special exam in this volume. Now we had been informed about the details of this time's special exam a long time ago. And also about what Ayonkoji and the class would do in this special exam. So the special exam this time was the long-awaited cultural festival. The goal was to be the class earning the most from their stall in the cultural festival, and accordingly to anime high school logic, Horikita's class decided to set up a maid cafe. Now, when I first heard of all this in the prior volume, I was like, well that sounds freaking boring. And I was sort of right in regards of that, cause the maid cafe part was as boorish as one would expect. Like, let's be honest, the preparation for the subsequent maid cafe, and the maid cafe event in a cultural festival, is as bland as special exams can get. Like there is no big brain plan that Ayonkoji can come up with for this exam. There is just fan service. Although Ayonkoji did use the fan service to his full advantage in winning this special exam. He used up his points and got Chabashira sensei in the maid costume. Charging people extravagantly for a picture with the sensei in maid uniform. And in the process gaining enough points to win the special exam, placing first. And you know, I am an individual of culture, I like the fan service affair a bit. But even then, I can't imagine even the most cultured out of the cultured to be ecstatic at the depiction of the maid cafe girls in a badly translated English PDF. All in all, I would say I didn't care for this special exam at all. From the start to the end of this special exam, I didn't find anything even remotely thrilling about it. And that was most likely cause there was nothing big about this special exam. Nothing at stake, nobody winning some big prize or suffering through some big setbacks. Which is very weird cause I feel like I have been reading about a cultural festival exam coming up for the past 6 volumes. And the climax of the special exam was just fan service that made Horikita's class win in the end. Even the competing classes, I felt like weren't taking this special exam seriously at all. Like Sakyongi straight up did nothing. Just doing the bare minimum and placing low at the end. Ryuan's and Horikita's class were the only ones actually competing but in behind the scenes they were not. Long story short, Ryuan's and Horikita's class looked like they were competing in sales from the outside. But on the inside Ryuan and Horikita and Ayonkoji had made a deal, so that it only appeared like they were fighting from the outside and they were actually just doing so for attention and from stopping others from setting up similar shops like them. They also made a fake bet for it. By the way, Ryuan also went for the fan service approach in this special exam, making a Japanese-style cafe. Would have appreciated some Ibuki fan service in Japanese-style dress, but we got Hiyori, that's good enough. By the way, don't think of me as a hypocrite for criticizing fan service first and then demanding some after a minute. Cause I might be one, but I don't wanna get accused for it for demanding some traditional Japanese-style Ibuki fan service. I think it's just humanity's right to want to see some more of this picture. But anyways, enough about the boring special exam, nobody wants to know more about that. Let's get to the crux of the matter. The hype part of this volume. The White Room students, Ikika Amasawa and Takuya Yagami, they both got expelled in this volume. Yups, that's right. And in the standard Ayonkoji fashion too. Meaning Ayonkoji did this while hiding in the shadows this time too. So first of all, let's talk about Ikika. Ikika basically approached Kushida, while she was in the middle of her maid duties and then took her to a secluded place. And then Ayonkoji tracked them and arrived at the scene cause of some help from Nagumo, I will discuss that afterwards. Anyways, long story short, Ayano God showed off his physical combat ability by easily taking care of Ikika. Saving Kushida in the process. And then he said some truth that we have read before, about how no one from the White Room can beat him. And how he didn't even have to be wary of the White Room students that much, cause Ayano God was very confident that he could beat them anytime he wanted. It was one of those few times that Ayonkoji reveals how badass he is. Leaving Ikika dispirited and Kushida surprised, just staring at the scene. That ungrateful bitch wasn't in awe by the Ayano God's abilities though. Kushida has sort of become like a strong independent mean girl character. I think in her own way she is now going to gel with the class, which I think was bound to happen ever since Horikita chose her in place of Sakura. I think I sort of understand what the author wants to do with the character of Kushida. He wants her to turn into a Ryuan-like character and let Kushida's Ayonkoji be Horikita. If that makes sense. But I will talk more about Kushida later in the video. Let's focus on the White Room student first. So after Ayonkoji was done bragging to Aikika, he also told her to go to the student council room later so that she could see with her own eyes Ayonkoji's smooth plan to deal with Yagami. And there is no easy way to describe what happened in the student council room than to tell you that Yagami really played himself. Really, I can talk in length about how Yagami screwed himself over in the presence of Ibuki, Horikita, Nagumo, Ryuan and the teachers. But I think this is one of the scenes that you have to read to appreciate its beauty. 'Cause it's hilarious. Yagami played himself so hard. Like he gets gaslight himself to believe that everyone is just working for Ayonkoji and out to get him. Like first he gets physically abused by Ibuki and he has to act his part and let Ibuki do what he wants. But then when Nagumo walks into the student council room, Yagami just goes off about how he knows this is just Ayonkoji's plan. I could almost feel the second-hand embarrassment when Yagami talked about how he knew that Horikita sent Nagumo an encrypted message on the orders of Ayonkoji. And Horikita and Nagumo are just like, bruh, what are you talking about? Of course, then Ryuan shows up with teachers to blame Yagami for his shady violent acts on the island exam. And he once again, gets manhandled by Ryuan. I must say, for someone who acted like a Giga Chad mastermind from the White Room, he was quite the sorry sight here. Like, Aikika had to step in and tell Yagami about how they had lost. And then Yagami lost his mind and went super ballistic psycho mode talking about how he was gonna kill Ayonkoji. And he knocked out Ibuki in his rage, but then the White Room people stepped in to escort Aikika and Yagami away. And Ibuki was the only casualty. I must say, Ibuki sure gets the rough treatment in all the volumes. She was the only one to get beaten up by Hosen in Year 2 Volume 1, and the only one to get knocked out by Yagami here. I would feel bad for her, but something tells me Ibuki doesn't really mind the violent treatment she receives. Anyways, while all this is going on, Horikita thinks about how this all could be orchestrated by Aikoji. Like no shit bitch. Yagami has screamed out Ayonkoji's name 10 fucking times in the student council. Of course he is the one pulling the strings. But is he the only one though? Now here is where things get interesting. So turns out Ayonkoji did do the deed. He got Horikita to hand over the encrypted love letter to Nagumo, through the help of Kei's friend. In the process, getting Horikita to pass the letter on to Yagami, allowing him to get info about the timing at which something fishy would be going on in the student council room. But there is another plot point that connects with Sato, who got approached by these first-year Class C student Tsubaki and Utomiya, who in turn were being puppeteered by another hidden existence who is also connected to the White Room. Now by this time, I am a bit tired of these hidden mastermind people. I don't care much for them. And from what is being said in this volume, they don't matter much. I think there is another secret first-year student connected with Ayonkoji's past, but he doesn't freaking matter. He is the mastermind who got Tsubaki and Utomiya to move, but he, like Ayonkoji, now wants to live a peaceful life and doesn't want to be bothered. He just had to take care of Yagami cause he was being too much of a trouble. Or in other words, he had to be expelled cause he was black. That's the literal English translation of the volume, and I am just sticking with it. Anyways, I don't think that hidden student will matter until like 4 volumes later. And even then, I think it might just be a plot point with not much substance. Just like the revenge of Hasabi this time. Now we know the hatred from the previous volume. We read the opening monologue of Hasabi and it's like, okay, she is going to do something crazy. You read the end of the volume, that shit got resolved quickly. And from freaking none other than Kushida. Yeah, Hasabi even helped in the maid cafe after Kushida told her about how bad of a person Hasabi was being. Like yeah, pot calling the kettle black much. But it was actually a bit understandable. Not cause Kushida did such a great job of getting Hasabi back into helping the class, but rather there wasn't much to do with that revenge plot point from the very beginning. Hasabi and Akito actually took the best possible way to hurt the class, which is to get themselves expelled, but yeah no, plot still needs them. So Ayonkoji approaches them with a plan when they need some manpower in the maid cafe and when Hasabi is about to hand in her expulsion form. I don't want to go into too much detail about this, cause I feel like this was a diffusion of a situation that needed to be diffused for the sake of plot. So basically Hasabi is a bad person who thinks Sakura is someone below her and then she wants out that she is succeeding as an idol. She realizes her selfishness, that got pointed out by Kushida. She is then filled with vigor to go back into the class, work together with them and aim for Class A. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a round of applause for Kushida, a total bitch who made a normal person feel guilty for being a bitch and getting her to amend her ways so that she could work in a maid cafe. Of course, a Yonkoji group is no more. Let's take this moment to think about the whole situation of Horikida's class. They have no internal problems anymore. Kushida is working with the class, cause she wants to prove her worth. Horikita, the simp, is obviously very happy with that. They are now in Class B and Horikita sleeps soundly while dreaming of happy thoughts about teaching Class A. Truly wanting to pave her way to Class A after the quote-unquote sacrifice of Sakura. Now I would have been fuming about this boring development, if I didn't know that this is just a calm before the storm. Author is obviously showing Horikita getting all happy and feeling the comradeship of her class only so that she would feel crushed later when a Yonkoji changes class. That in my mind, would be true hype of the show. And the thing I await for in the next volumes with utmost anticipation. That would be the saving grace of all the comradeship fuckery and smooth sailing that Horikita is going through right now. I really want that to happen. I don't just want it to be another one of a Yonkoji's plan like the expulsion of Kushida that gets talked about for 6 volumes but then never happens. I do think that is not the case with this plan of a Yonkoji. But for the sake of my excitement for this series, I want it to happen in the next volume. Or at least something related to it. And what would probably lead to that happening would be the match a Yonkoji is going to have with Nagumo. See, a Yonkoji has challenged Nagumo up front. In this volume, a Yonkoji went straight to the student council room and went, let's do a final one-on-one fight or you are pussy. So what the match is going to be about, what special exam they are going to be competing in, what bet they are placing. We don't know about any of that. There might be many theories about that, but I just wanna go into it blind when the next volume comes out. But anyways, now Nagumo is working with a Yonkoji so that they can have their match. A Yonkoji also seems to have gained an interest in having a match against Nagumo, so we might see some hype all-out shit in the next volume. Talking about the next volume, a volume 0 is going to be released which going to be all about a Yonkoji's past in the White Room. That could be fun. In his afterwards, the author also talked about the anime having a season 3 already planned. So the Code fandom will be eating good this year. Or maybe not, maybe the anime wouldn't live up to the standards of the light novel readers. How like there are some pretentious bastards who just won't like the anime and proclaim light novel as the superior consumer of media and better than the anime without even giving the anime a chance. Yeah, I am sort of like one of those people. I don't really have exceedingly high expectations of the anime. I would watch it though. The soundtrack I think will be banging in 2nd and 3rd season, and the anime openings and endings are always a blessings. I would be disappointed though if I don't see an epic soundtrack and godly animation in the rocket punch scene. I think that deserves some high-class budget. Other than that, I don't really know what to expect from the anime.